Left, Right, in the Middle is made possible through grant funding by SRCI, the Student Research and Creativity Institute at Saginaw Valley State University. SRCI, your dream, your project, your research.
In the past 6 presidential cycles, the Republican Party has won a majority of the vote just once in 2004, and then barely. Contrast that with the 6 previous presidential elections, where the Republican Party won 5, and in all 6, including the defeats, averaged 52.5% of the vote. A majority party from 68 to 88, a majority party no more since 88. The core problem is an economic message that is not appropriate to these times, very appropriate to the 1980s, but increasingly irrelevant to middle-class America today.
Because I saw my doctor today, and he tells me I must go away for a little while. He just gave me a frown, said you have to leave town, for your nerves are run down. No fear, I'm not going to die, I just dropped in to say goodbye. So goodbye to the lights and the glorious nights, it's the price I am paying for my cabareting, and the old doctor tells me my liver is queer. I must rest for a year. I have nervous prostration from that hesitation, but I don't regret it. The bankroll, I'll bet that if I'm in good condition a year from today, why, I'll do it all over again.
Welcome to Left, Right, in the Middle. I'm your recently absent host, Scott. Now, it's been a few weeks since I've posted a podcast, and I apologize for that, but had some family difficulties that I've been working with, and an illness in my family, and things are better now, but sometimes you've got to step away and take stock in what your priorities are, and this podcast was not one of my priorities. So, like I said, things are back on track now and doing well. I still had to take a few weeks to kind of get caught up on my schoolwork, and I've been applying to grad school also, so I've been dealing with some of those things. But I'm back in a good position now and ready to hopefully start doing this podcast fairly regularly again. And unfortunately, I had to do it at a time when there was a huge political event, which was presidential election, of course. But I would have liked to have done a few shows leading up to that, maybe focusing on the candidates and their issues or a key issue that the candidates were talking about. But it is what it is. It's past us now. I didn't get a chance to do a podcast before the elections, so what I say now, people can say sure, but I had no surprises with the outcome. A lot of people on the Republican side seemed absolutely shocked, but if I would have given a prediction prior to the election that could have been recorded, I would have said Barack Obama would have finished with about 300 or 305 electorals. The Democrats would have picked up a couple seats in the Senate, and the Republicans may have picked up a couple seats in the Congress, but everything would have stayed about the same. And that's basically what happened. Actually, Obama got about 30 more electorals than I thought he would. But if Florida would have swung Romney's way, then I would have been pretty much spot on that. And that's not because I think I'm so smart. It's just I tend to follow Nate Silver's tracking. He's been pretty much on over the last couple election cycles, and as much as some of the Republicans want to maybe claim that he's an ideologue, if you happen to hear what Joe Scarborough said about him, an ideologue isn't somebody who tracks numbers and puts all these formulas together and he comes up with numbers. He's just somebody who's reporting numbers. So your Karl Roves and your whatnot are the ones that were living in a fantasy land, and I think it showed. And that's what this show is going to be about, is I think the fantasy land that the Republican Party is living in right now. I'm looking at this from the side of a liberal point of view. I don't deny that I'm a liberal, but I also don't deny that in order for America to work, in order for our political system to work, we need at least two robust parties. I think we need more than two robust parties. I think part of the problem is we only have two parties, and the problem is you only get the choice between, I think, what was it, South Park said, a douchebag and a shit sandwich. And, in the end, you almost end up voting against somebody rather than for somebody. But regardless, we need at least two robust parties in this country. And the Republican Party is far from a robust party at this point, in my opinion. Now, you can say, well, what about the midterm elections or things like that? To me, those are anomalies, because in these elections, basically, the base is going to show up. And if you want to look at the last 6 presidential elections, the Republican Party has only won the popular vote once, and that was by a slim margin. That was Bush back in 2004 over Kerry. Remember, Bush did not win the popular vote when he was elected in 2000 or when he was selected in 2000. So, you can go back to the few elections before that with Clinton. You can go back to the 2 Obama elections. And, of course, Clinton only got 47% in his first election because of Ross Perot's involvement in that. But regardless, 5 of the last 6 elections, the Republican Party has not gotten the popular vote and barely got it in the one election. And why is this? Well, I mean, they want to remain the party of Reagan, the party of the 80s. Well, that was 30 years ago. A lot of things have changed since then. You want to keep appealing to old white men? Well, old white men are dying. They have no message that really, they have no broad message that can reach out to young voters, can reach out to minorities, can reach out to women. And in fact, they tend to actually, not only do they not reach those voters, they alienate those voters, and it seems like they try to do that. It doesn't make sense to me that everything you say appeals to your base when your base is going to vote for you anyway. Why? And sometimes the liberals do this too. Why are you just trying to appeal to your base? Your base is going to vote for you. Try finding a message that can kind of reach the middle while still keeping the basic message of your party. But the Republicans seem to relish in disparaging minorities, disparaging women, disparaging the working poor. They lump anybody who gets any kind of benefit into this user that wants to just suck on the tit of government, when a lot of the corporations that they stand so firmly behind suck on that tit harder than anybody. And we're not all that stupid. I think a lot of us realize this. Stop standing behind the people that have so much and disparaging. You don't have to stand behind those that don't have it, but stop disparaging them. Don't act like the oil companies that get billions of dollars in subsidies aren't sucking the government tit just as much as, the guy that works at Walmart 60 hours or 40 hours a week plus another 20-hour job somewhere else and still has to get $200 in food stamps a month because he can't get enough working at these jobs, or he can't, or maybe he can get enough for that, but he can't afford insurance because they won't give him insurance. So, when Obama gives the gift of insurance to people, now they're going to vote for him? No, somebody finally stood up in the government and said, hey, you know what? These companies aren't going to give you insurance. Maybe the government needs to do something about it. You got companies now like Papa John's Pizza that are threatening to cut their working staff, and a lot of other restaurants now are doing this. They're going to cut their working staff so they don't have to give their employees insurance. That's ridiculous. When this first came out, Papa John's actually said they were going to raise their pizza prices 14 cents in order to cover this cost, and I thought that was great. I thought, be proactive. That's great. And I think I mentioned this on my podcast about healthcare. So that's great. You're being proactive. You're seeing what it's going to cost you to insure your employees. Well, now he's going to raise the price of his pizza and still cut his employee staff because he doesn't want to give them insurance. Well, that's absolutely ridiculous. That's the cost of business, insuring your employees, not passing that on to the government, not sucking the government tit. But it's okay if companies do that, right? It's okay if companies do that. It's not okay if an individual does that. And that's the mentality that Republicans have, that most conservatives have. And I don't know why they think that message is going to continue to work with the average individual, the average voter. They're not going to win presidential elections that way. So this show is going to be about ways in which I think the Republican Party needs to adjust their message, the way they need to soften their message, the way they need to try to change policies to try to get across to the average voter. I would consider voting for a Republican if I thought they were frickin' sane. John McCain, to me, was a good candidate. John McCain was a good politician until he ran for president. He became insane. Not even before he brought in the craziest person in the world, Sarah Palin. Just the way he changed some of his stances on issues that he stood so firmly behind for so many years as a moderate. All of a sudden, he was this right-wing idiot. Same thing with Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney was about as middle of the road as you can get as a Republican until he became that Republican candidate. And that's why I talk about just appealing to the base. All of a sudden, all you do is fall back to the base. appeal to their base instincts. Grab that low-hanging fruit. It didn't do them any good. If Republicans continue to do that and run for the White House, Republicans will never hold the White House again. Continue to disparage the working poor. Continue to try to deny women their rights and tell women what they should do with their body, and that if they get raped, they should see it as a gift. I don't know who you're thinking you're appealing to when you say these things. Do you ever look in the mirror and say these things and think, wow, that sounded like a good idea? Because it sounds like a whole lot of stupid coming out to me, and the polls show it. People are not going to vote for lunatics. Now, Democrats might not be the smartest people in the world, and in fact, I think they're all basic idiots too, because they don't hardly know how to argue a point at all, or else they would crush the Republicans even more. But this show, I'm going to hopefully lay out 4 or 5 points that if the Republicans would take this advice, soften their stance on some issues, moderate on some issues, and consider working with the Democrats to get some things done, instead of being obstructionist and being the party of no, at least consider being the party of maybe, that they might stand a chance to actually put a candidate out there. And I actually haven't talked about some of the candidates they should put out there too. They might stand a chance of putting a candidate out there that could stand a chance to get in the White House. Because at the pace they're going, they're eventually even going to start losing Senate or congressional seats. And if we get to a point where the Democrats hold the House, the Senate, and the White House again, and it doesn't seem that the Republicans really have a chance of winning anything, well then, now you're looking at basically one party having power in this country, and that is not a good thing.
My friends all tell me that I've lost it, and I've got no direction. They say I'm giving up and I'm giving in to all my frustrations. Well, don't you know that when you catch the mood, you can't shake feeling low and small. There isn't anything they can tell you makes you feel like anything at all. But if you're living like the dead, if you're living like the dead, you can rise up again. Yes, you can rise up again. You can rise again. My friends all tell me that I'm out of touch. Things don't seem like they're moving. And they wonder what I'm gonna do with the things I've been doing. But why do I have to know? And I don't care if I get to show you. Whoa, 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 whoa. And I take it slow and give it all to tomorrow. And if you're living like the dead, if you're living like the dead, yes, you can rise up again. Or you can rise up again. You can rise again. Yes, you can rise again.
Okay, so for this show, I'm just going to run through a few key areas where I think that if the Republican Party and the Republicans kind of moderate their stance or just ease back on some of the language they're using, they probably stand a better chance of performing better in a general election. And I think the first thing that really stands out to me when it comes to whether it's the pundits or the representatives that I see on TV is we need to stop laying the blame of our deficit and debt problems at the Democrats' feet. Stop acting like this is all built by Democrats. I don't know if anything burns me more than seeing 8 years of a Republican president running up debt, running up deficit, and the day a Democrat takes office, all of a sudden they're screaming to the heavens that we've got to do something about this debt. We've got to do something about this. This is, it's out of control. It's unconscionable. The country can't go on with it. Where were you for those 8 years that the Republican was in office? Why didn't that seem to be a problem during that time? Reagan ran up more debt than all the previous presidents combined. And then Bush did the same thing. That'd be Bush 1. And then Clinton came along, and maybe this isn't known to the average person. In the last 2 years of Clinton's presidency, there was actually a budget surplus. And he had us in line on a 20-year plan. And, of course, all things had to work out in that 20-year plan. But in a 20-year plan, he had a plan to reduce the debt. I've never seen a Republican do that. All they do is add to it. All they've done is add to it. The only president that didn't, I believe, was Eisenhower. And if you're a conservative out there listening to this, you might have just fallen over. Because you can act like you care. You can say the right words on TV to the low-hanging fruit that are going to believe your words because they don't actually go check the facts. But care when you're in office. Don't care when a Democrat's in office. What did Bush 2 do? He took that surplus and immediately gave tax cuts to everybody, massive tax cuts to the rich, created a huge deficit, budget deficit that is, and massively added to the debt. And then of course started 2 wars that I argued from day one didn't need to be started because who are we fighting? We're fighting shadows. I said we'd be in these wars forever. I'm right so far. I said these wars would cost us trillions of dollars with no results. I'm right so far. And the one thing Bush did is he never put the money for the war on his budgets. He had all these shadow budgets. He would just add these surplus to his budget. He never put it on his budget. At least Obama did that in his first year in office. He put the war on his budget. So stop acting like tax and spend Democrats have created this deficit, this budget deficit, and this massive debt. Stop acting like that. Start owning up to what you did, what your party did. When you do that, when you say, that's what an addict has to do. An addict has to say, I have a problem and I need help. But nobody's going to help the addict until the addict helps himself. And that's the one thing the Republicans haven't been able to do yet is admit they have a problem. They act like it's all somebody else's problem. They deflect. And so I won't vote for a Republican until a Republican admits they have a problem. They go through the 12-step program. They apologize to me and they get help. A Republican runs on the model that government can't do anything. Then they get elected and they prove it. So, get help. You've already got the religious part. That's what people in AA do. They tend to find religion. You've already got the religious part, but do something with it. Get help. Tell us you have a problem. Fix that problem, and then people might start to vote for you more. But I think people are getting sick of you pissing on their back and telling them it's raining. At least hand out some umbrellas. And along that line, stop this stance of wanting to cut entitlements, but then there's going to be no tax hike for the rich or anything along that line. Well, once again, there was a budget surplus under Clinton. And when Bush came in, you could make the argument that, we could have tweaked the tax code a little bit. But if you are so damn concerned with cutting into this debt, which you obviously weren't when Bush took office, because we were cutting into it and you decided to eliminate that. But if you're so damn concerned about it, maybe a sensible tax cut would have been in line that would have at least kept us minimally cutting into the debt. But Bush did these deep cuts across the board. There was immediately a budget deficit. The debt began to rise again. And then, of course, the wars came along, and I'm not going to get back into that. So, there was a program in place. But now what's the answer? What's the Republicans' answer? Take away from entitlement programs. Take away from those who need it. Don't tax the rich. Don't tax the upper 2% that can afford it, that enjoy all these benefits that this country provides for them. Don't do that. And my answer is I say tax everybody a little bit more, but at least tax the upper 2%. But no, don't do that. That's not the Republicans' answer. Don't do that. Make sure that people's Social Security is cut into. Make sure insurance and things along that line and programs that help the poor are cut into. That's their answer. And you can keep trying to put forward this meme that these are the users of society. But again, I think this election has shown that the majority of people don't believe that. Don't believe that. They don't believe that these people are users. They believe that sometimes people need help. And when you stand behind corporations that are making billions of dollars of profit a quarter, when you stand behind those corporations and say that their billion-dollar subsidies are okay, but John Doe, who needs a few $100s to get by this month, his handout isn't okay. Well, I think, again, people are starting to understand that this just isn't right. And I think my last point along this line is stop accusing Democrats and liberals of hating America or hating the American way of life. Please correct me if I'm wrong out there, but I don't really see Democrats or liberals going on TV and saying that Republicans hate America. We disagree on things. We see things differently, but I don't think a Republican hates America. And I don't know. It disgusts me and offends me, and I don't get offended too easily when I see a Republican or a pundit saying that liberals hate America. Democrats hate America. They want to destroy America. Well, that's ridiculous. I don't know how many times I've heard that Obama wants to destroy America. How foolish is that? Do you ever really think about how that sounds? The president wants to destroy America. Yes, right. I mean, that's just ignorant. So stop saying that. Stop that meme. Go back to my first episode on ideologies. We sometimes see things differently. Because I see something differently than you does not mean that I want to destroy the country that I live in. It doesn't make sense to shit in your own bed. Now, we can have debates over what if the policy makes sense, if the policy can help America. We might see things differently, but to say that somebody wants to destroy the country because their policy is different is ridiculous. So, until you can start doing these things, until you can stop laying the blame at the feet, stop trying to cut programs for people that need help while you prop up people that don't need help, and stop accusing people of hating a country that they live in when their policy is just different than yours. Nobody's claiming you of hating the country for starting 10-year wars and running up huge deficits and huge debt. They're just saying that your policy was bad. So stop putting that at our feet. Until you can do that, you're never going to see the White House again.
Someone says, pack your bags, pack everything you need. You never know what misery will come to you. Can you see the future? Is it bad? Oh, say, can you see the future? Oh, say, can you see the future? Oh, say, can you see the future the way I do?
Now, before I move on to my next few points, I actually want to just go back a little bit, because when I was talking about entitlements, and I threw Social Security in there, and I just want to stress that Social Security isn't an entitlement. That word's obviously very often used as pejorative, especially by conservatives, people on the right. And it's an entitlement. Well, Social Security is something that you pay into your whole life. It's go back to my show on Social Security and listen to that. So I'm not going to get too much into it. But what I do want to play is this audio, because I believe that the one thing that most conservatives do now is pray at the feet of the god Ronald Reagan. And quite honestly, I liked Ronald Reagan a lot myself. Thought he was a good politician, thought he was a good person. Didn't always agree with his policies, but hey, I don't always agree with Obama's policies. I didn't always agree with Clinton's policies. I'm not some toe-the-line liberal. I look at each individual policy and I decide, what's best. And I thought Reagan did a pretty good job through the 80s. I believe his trickle-down economics was complete crap, and I think our economic system now is showing that. But there was other good things that he did, and I just believe he was a good politician in the sense that he wasn't one of those people that tried to say that liberals hate America. He just said we disagree. But I want to play this audio for you, and if you're a conservative out there, you love Ronald Reagan, right? This guy's the god. So tell me he's an asshole. When you hear this, tell me he's an asshole. Tell me that you don't believe what he just said. So listen to this audio.
Social Security has nothing to do with the deficit. Social Security is totally funded by the payroll tax levied on employer and employee.
And so, does Social Security affect the deficit or the budget? It affects it in the sense that we owe so much back to it because people bowed so much against it. Both sides of the aisle did. And again, go back to my show on Social Security. We kept putting our hand in that cookie jar because we didn't want to raise taxes or find money to pay for programs that we wanted, so we just kept taking it from Social Security. But Social Security does not affect the deficit. It does not affect the budget, or shouldn't affect the budget, other than the fact that we owe money back to it. So the conservatives need to keep their hands off of it. They need to drop that issue. They need to stop misrepresenting the fact that Social Security, is a burden on the budget of the deficit. Right there is another issue that they really need to drop or refocus, because for one thing, part of their base is people 60 and over. But if they keep trying to convince these people that you need to give up some of your money, some of that money that you put away, some of that money that we kept taking from because we didn't want to raise taxes on the rich. You need to give some of that money up now so that we can keep the tax cuts for the rich. You need to give some of that money up now. Keep putting that message out there and see what it does for you. See what it does for you in 2 years. You're going to lose the House too. So it's just a fair warning to you. Because as I said, as a liberal, I don't want to see the Republicans fail. Although I do believe that Republicans want to see liberals fail. And I don't understand that mentality. We have opposing views. That's fine. What we need to do is find ways that we can get together and find the best policy that sometimes is going to be best for a liberal, sometimes going to be best for a conservative, but really what's best for people down the middle, what's best for the country. And I believe that a lot of conservatives really just want to absolutely see liberals fail. I believe that the Republicans and the pundits, the leaders in the Republican Party for 4 years, did everything they could to make Obama's presidency a failure without really worrying about what it really meant to the country. And that's absurd. It's one thing to say, I don't believe in that policy. It's another thing just to say, I'm not going to stand behind anything. I'm not going to try to let him pass anything. I'm not going to let anything go forward, not let anything progress because I want him to fail. Don't you understand that as the president fails, so does the country? So try to find a way that we can meet in the middle, that we can say, what can work for all of us? How can we get this to work? So a few other things I want to talk about are just some of these culture war issues that the Republicans put forward. I believe that if you just soften your stance on some of these issues, and I don't have the answers to this exactly, how you can continue to appeal to your base, but yet kind of move to the middle on these issues. But again, as I say, I don't understand the mentality of strictly appealing to your base when I believe those people are going to vote for you anyway. They'll probably say, if you don't do this, don't do that, I'm not going to vote for you. But what's their alternative? If you're such a staunch Republican or such a staunch liberal, are you going to vote for the other party? I really doubt it. So it's not to say totally put your base off, but when it comes to things like immigration policy or gay marriage or women's rights, women's equality, things like that, the Republican Party is going backwards. They keep talking about, we want these traditional values, or we want things to be the way they were. Well, you know what? How things were? We had slavery. Women couldn't vote. We had child labor. We had things like that. Yeah, take us back to those times. That's great. That'd be great for the rich white man, but it doesn't make sense to anybody else. And as the demographics in this country continue to shift, as Bill O'Reilly says, the white man's becoming the minority, and you can see the fear in his eyes as he says it. Keep appealing to the rich white man and see what that does for you. For immigration policy, just stop disparaging the Hispanic culture. Stop questioning their work ethic. They're coming to this country to work. They're coming to this country for better opportunity, which, trace back your heritage. That's exactly what your great-grandfather, grandfather, great-great-great, whoever it was, whoever came to this country, unless you're a pure-blood American Indian, somebody in your past, in your lineage, came to this country to seek a better life for your family. And, of course, the argument could be whether they do it legally or illegally, and we can have that debate. But stop disparaging their culture. Stop questioning their work ethic. They're coming here to work. They're coming here to work their ass off for pennies on the dollar. So stop disparaging them. Stop saying that they're just coming here for handouts. You see these memes on Facebook about, they're just coming across here to get free health care and schooling for their children and all these things. And, here's a news flash for you. The Obama administration deported more immigrants than any other presidency, any other administration, more than Bush did. And we get benefits back from them. The farmers depend on them. Immigrants paying the Social Security that they can't collect, things along that line. So, really rethink your immigration policy. And I think actually that is something they're doing. I even saw Sean Hannity, I about fell over. Sean Hannity said he really needs to rethink it. And then when it comes to gay rights, I don't understand why you keep hinged on this religious right belief that homosexuality is an abomination under the Lord. And if you want to believe that, fine, believe it. But what the hell does that have to do with government policy? What the hell does that have to do with the rights of a citizen in America? If you truly believe that being gay is a choice, you're an idiot. I'm telling you, you're an idiot. Homosexuality is not a choice. Just like being born black or being born white or being born Hispanic. You didn't choose that. That's how you were born. And to try to deny these people a basic right that should be given to them under the Constitution that you stand so firmly behind, that you tout so much when it comes to anything that can support your beliefs. But when it comes to giving an individual a right that should be a birthright to them in this country, now all of a sudden you change your stance and you want to stay behind religious grounds or just your moral stance. What does your morality have to do with government policy? It should have nothing to do with government policy. We should base policy off of what our Constitution says, what the law of the land is, and put your morality aside. Put your religious beliefs aside. I think the thing that makes me laugh the most is when they talk about how the sanctity of marriage. And usually these people that are talking about that are on their 4th or 5th marriage. So what's the sanctity in it? Are you afraid that if we allow homosexuals to get married, their marriage rate's going to be better? It just doesn't make sense to me that it's one thing to say you don't believe in it, but just the way you tend to disparage that which you don't believe in. And when you do that, how do you think that you're ever going to get people that either are in that minority or stand behind that minority to vote for you? So keep doing that and see how that works out for you. And when it comes to women's rights, I think the rape issue was really key in this last election. And it amazed me, this meme that seemed to be carried, and I'm sure if you're conservative, you can say it was the liberal media kind of taking advantage of a few missteps along the campaign trail for a couple different people. But there was a handful of occasions, if not even close to 10 to a dozen occasions, when different politicians basically accused they blamed the victim. It's the woman's fault for being raped. Or if you are raped, see it as a blessing. It's absurd and ignorant. And it cost a few seats for the Republicans. And if you continue, and even after the election now, you have, I think her name's Dana Perino. She was in the Bush White House. She was actually his press secretary for a while, basically saying that women need to make better choices. Well, I believe about a third of the women are actually raped in their own home. So stop, don't stay at home, women. Leave your house. Even after the election, they're still carrying on some of these ignorant memes. So keep doing that. Keep disparaging women that are raped. Keep blaming the victim. Start using common sense. And of course, this whole rape thing is all tied back to abortion. They don't even want a woman who's raped to be allowed to have an abortion. And you should see it as a blessing from God. Well, what if you don't believe in God and you get raped? How are you going to see it? They make this assumption that everybody's going to believe in God, or even if you do, that you get raped, it's going to be a blessing. It's just not that simple. That it's a touchy situation when it comes to abortion, and that's an issue that it's always going to be there in our politics. It's always going to be this culture war issue that conservatives are going to use to try to rally people to their side. And so as far as using that, I don't have any answers for that. But I think you need to really soften your stance when it comes to the rape issue. A lot of these issues when it comes to rights for gay men or women, women's rights, immigration policy as far as people coming here for a better way of life, to become an American, to enjoy the American prosperity. I think these things all should stand in line with Republican beliefs, their beliefs in individual freedom and a chance for prosperity. So I don't see why they can't try to get behind these issues and mold these issues into their party policy. Because to me, it strikes me as one, they're either racist or sexist. There's either racism or misogyny in there. We believe in these things. We believe in these core values of allowing for individual freedom and individual prosperity. Unless it's for brown people or gay people or women. But if you're not in that group, we're going to stand behind you. And here's a little newsflash to you. Those groups are growing. Those groups aren't going to vote for you. So keep up that policy. Keep doing what you're doing. And you'll never see the White House again.
Let's talk. See, I remember when I first started this. Yeah. It was a 4-track recorder, a drum kit, a keyboard, and a microphone. Let's go. This is not the album shit. This is the banana shit. If I can't spit, I get sick. This is my medicine. People try to chop me up, but this is not your average. Slouch socks, gray sweats, great New Balance shit. 95 Southern playalistic fucking Catholic. That was just my catalyst when I was on my Madden shit. Didn't have an NPC, so obviously I had to get creative with the beats. I asked my mother, could I have a kit, drumsticks. Now I'm on that thump shit. Honor roll student, I was never on that dumb shit. Rockville, Maryland, Silver Spring. Spring, Maryland. I never gave a damn, I went bananas everywhere I went. 36 chambers and ready to die. But when that Bone Thugs came on, I'm ready to fly. I can remember when, back when I was innocent, where I got my style, I get nostalgia when I reminisce. Sometimes I get nostalgia. This is not the album shit. This is the banana.
So for this last segment, what I want to talk about is kind of going back to actually that opening audio I had, which was David Fromm, who used to be a speechwriter for Bush 2. And that was actually some audio taken from On Point with Tom Ashbrook, an episode that was basically focused on what the Republican Party needs to do to kind of right the ship. But David Fromm pointed out that he's really not one of the higher ups in the Republican Party. People don't necessarily listen to him, but what he had to say was that the Republican Party needs to change their economic message, that they want to continue to be the party of Reagan and continue those policies from the 80s. And as I stated, the trickle-down economics are not working. You can look at the economic indicators from, say, early to mid-1980s till now, and all indicators show that those on top are getting more, those in the middle and below are getting less. Nothing's trickling down. Where's the trickle down happening? Where are the jobs being created at? This money is getting sucked up. And so David Fromm is basically saying, we need to change that message. We need to change our economic outlook, our economic position, and stop being the party of Reagan, being the party of the 80s. You can be the party of Reagan in certain aspects, maybe some of his core values, but stop acting like Reagan was this all-knowing God that did everything right. When Reagan raised taxes a few times throughout the 80s because he realized that what he was doing wasn't working. Also along the lines of Reagan supported unions. Reagan supported Social Security. And Reagan spent and spent and spent. Not only that, it was deficit spending. So I don't know that anything frustrates me more than hearing conservatives talk about how Reagan was this magnificent, amazing president that was basically a god that saved our country. He did good things. He did bad things. He was a president. He was human. But Reagan was the great communicator. Reagan knew how to get a message across. Reagan was an actor. He was an actor before he became president. He acted the part of president well. But Reagan wasn't the person I think that everybody thinks he was. So, as Fromm was saying, they need to change their economic message because people aren't buying that message anymore. People, I think, are starting to see that. What is the answer? The answer the Republicans always have is just lower taxes again. Just cut taxes even more. Cut taxes even more, and then that money will eventually, get back into the economy, get put into businesses, the job creators. I hate that term, the job creators. Where are the jobs at? We had a budget surplus. Bush cut taxes, and we went into a damn near depression, whatever you want to call it, definitely a recession. Where are the job creators? We went into a recession during a time of massive spending for war. That's what brought us out of the depression the first time, back in the 40s. Bush could not do one thing right in his presidency. Created massive deficits and debt. Couldn't take us out of a depression or keep us from falling into a recession in a time of war, during massive government spending. So if the answer is let's cut taxes some more, how's that going to work? Show me how it's going to work, because I don't see it. But if the Republican Party can't come up with a better economic message, a better way of addressing the issues that need to be addressed in this country, a better way of finding the way that we can address the deficit, not just the deficit, the debt, and find a way that we can still pay for the things that we need. We need social programs. We need programs for the poor so that they can try to get themselves out of poverty. We need programs for education, things like Pell Grants and funding for public schools. We need infrastructure. I believe the Army Corps of Engineers released a report a few years back that said we basically need $3 trillion in infrastructure spending to get us up to par. And we're supposed to be the greatest country in the world, but our infrastructure is deteriorating while we're building countries in the Middle East. How much money have we put into trying to build infrastructure in Iraq, Afghanistan? Imagine if we'd have spent that money here. So refocus your economic policy. Refocus where it is that money should be spent or where money should come from. And drop this notion that if we just continue to do what Reagan did, we just have to go back and do what Reagan did again, that everything's going to be okay. It's a totally different time now. We're 30 years removed from when Reagan was in office. It's a totally different time. It's a totally different economy. It's a totally different world. It's a totally different demographic of voters. So if you want to keep continuing those policies, you're going to keep continuing to see the results you see in elections. And again, as a liberal, I don't necessarily mind seeing Democrats being elected. But I also don't see how it could be good for America if Republicans continue to go down the path they're going down, if they continue to alienate the people that they're alienating, if they continue to have such a narrow focus on the electorate that they want to appeal to. I don't see how that's good for America. Let's hope that the Republicans can get their heads out of their asses, can try to appeal to a broader base of the electorate, and stand a chance that we can have some real discussion in elections, some real debate in elections, and move forward. And I guess if there's one last thing I'd like to add that I would love to see the Republican Party do is denounce the pundits that seem to be the voice of their party. You know, it's one thing to have people out there that, you know, are kind of on your side or you know, maybe just the voice for you in a way, but you know, when you think of the Democrats, you don't necessarily think of, you know, radio mouthpieces. There's some out there, or some news pundits that maybe are more liberal. But when you think of Republicans, you know, somebody like a Rush Limbaugh or an Ann Coulter or Bill O'Reilly, or, you know, these people come to mind. And Bill O'Reilly at least is kind of on a news program, even though I would argue that Fox News is about the furthest thing from news. But these people seem to be almost the face or the voice of the party. And of course, some politicians are in a way, but even somebody like a Sarah Palin, who no longer is even in office, is almost the face or the voice of the party. Well, find some politicians that can be the voice of the party, some reasonable politicians. You know, but leading up to the election, you had so many of these pundits basically guaranteeing a Republican victory. And I don't know whether they were blowing smoke up the listeners' asses, the voters' asses, and trying to, you know, make people feel confident in what was going on. That's fine. If you feel confident in your candidate, that's fine. But I mean, these people, your Dick Morrises, your Rush Limbaughs, they were, you know, we've got it in the bag. We're going to crush it. We're going to take the Senate back. We're going to win the presidency, over 300 electoral votes. It's going to be a landslide, all this and that. Ignore the polls. They kept telling you, ignore the polls. They've got the real polling. And even Joe Scarborough came out and accused Nate Silver, who runs the blog at New York Times, and he's somebody that I've followed actually for the last several election cycles because he seems to always be spot on at his polling. You know, Joe Scarborough accused him of basically being biased in his polling when he's just doing the math. He's just crunching the numbers. And Joe Scarborough, I think, is fairly moderate. At least he's on the liberal channel MSNBC. So again, there's just, to me, you know, too much crazy going on. And you got somebody like Joe Scarborough accusing Nate Silver of being biased just because he's putting out numbers there that you don't want to see. It just doesn't make sense. What you do is, first of all, you make yourself look stupid. And, you know, your Dick Morrises, your Rush Limbaugh, of course, Rush Limbaugh does plenty of things to make himself look stupid. But, you know, all these people leading up to the election were so certain that they were basically betting the farm on it, that they were going to win this election. And then, of course, they didn't. And now a lot of them are backtracking or making excuses as to why they didn't win the election. Well, because Obama, you know, gave gifts. He gave gifts to the 47%. What kind of gifts did he give? Let's look at this. You know, say for the young voters that voted for him, the college-age students. Well, what did he give them? Well, he kind of helped them out on their student loans as far as money they're going to have to pay back. They're still going to have to pay that money back, by the way. It's just, you know, a little less percentage here, a little loan forgiveness, you know, after 20 years instead of 25 years. I think it is 10 years if you become a public sector employee. And he gave these kids in college, you know, an opportunity to get health care through subsidies programs that could get them health care or allowed them to stay on their parents' health care longer. So that's the gift he gave them. You know, what other kind of gifts did he give to people? You know, minorities. I think they're trying to say he gave the gift of welfare to them. He didn't do anything different than it's already there. He didn't promise them any further welfare programs. Those things are there. Why they maybe voted for him was because they feared that the Republicans were going to strip away programs that are helping them. You know, I'm one of those people. I'm just finishing up my bachelor's degree. I hope to go to graduate school next year, but my family gets food stamps. I've worked for 20 years at different jobs, you know, barely scraping by. I decided I wanted to go back to college. So my family gets food stamps. Oh, we do get Medicaid also. but we're going to get that for a few years. And then hopefully I'll be making enough money to be in a higher tax bracket, which I will gladly pay those taxes, so that somebody else can have the opportunity that I had over the last few years. But the Republicans want to take that away, because you just need to grab your bootstraps, pull yourself up. That's how you do it in America. Well, that meme is ignorant, and that meme is not true. That's a 1 in a million shot. Everybody gets help. You look at everybody that's made it, they got help somewhere along the way. A lot of these people had rich mommies or daddies or uncles that gave them money to get them started. Maybe the government didn't have the money, but somebody did. Hardly anybody just does it on their own. Hardly anybody just goes out and says, I am dirt poor and I'm going to go out and become a millionaire, and does it. That just doesn't happen. And so, taking away programs that are going to make it harder for people to do that, it's not a gift. It's just what we do in this country, what good Christians do in this country. You try to help people out. So keep disparaging that 47%. Keep acting like that 47% are the lowest common denominator, are the dirt of this country, are the... By the way, most of those people are actually working. We have the working poor in this country that still need to get some kind of government aid. The largest employer in the world is Walmart. And Walmart doesn't really give their employees benefits. A few of their, a small percentage of their full-time employees. The rest, they work just enough to not give them benefits. And they don't pay them enough to not be able to afford to live off of the government dole. And they even have policies that basically encourage their employees and offer them the literature on how they can go out and get government help. So are these people the users of society? The working poor are the hardest working people there are. But yet they want to go out and disparage these people. They want to make it look like these people are the users of society. Are these people going to vote for Republicans? I know I wouldn't if I was working my ass off and then just had to get maybe a little assistance from the government to maybe get my fuel tank filled so that I could have heat in the winter. And then a politician comes on and basically accuses me of being a user. I'm sorry, I work 60 hours a week. I still can't get by because of the economic systems that's been created. But I'm a user just because I don't want to freeze my balls off during the winter time. So, keep trying that approach and we'll see how it works out for you. But these aren't gifts. These are things that society does to support those that have less than those that have been able to get themselves to the top through the means that the government has set up, through the roads that they have, through the power grid that the government helps set up. All these things, the economic system, the banking system, all these things that are there so that people can prosper. But once you get to the top, you seem to ignore the fact that you got a lot of help along the way, and now everybody below you, is just a piss on that is trying to suck the government tit when you're ignoring everything that you got from the government or are still getting from the government that helped you be what you are today. And so if you want to carry on that meme and keep conveying that message, you're never going to see the White House again.
After disaster, we never talked.
Can you hear me?
You never called me again.
Hang on.
After disaster, did you forget? We almost had love. After disaster, everything changes. After disaster, it's not the same. After disaster, you changed your name or changed your mind, all the same. After disaster, you broke my heart. You never saw the pain. After disaster, everything changes. After disaster, it's not the same.
After the disaster, I did everything I could to find you. I called your name from rooftops. I used flares. I even used those annoying ass air horns they used at the Dodgers game. Alas, you never came to me. I only have one last thing I could possibly resort to, and that's to sing this song right here. I hope that one day you hear it because
After disaster, nothing is the same. But I'll wait
So to wrap it up, I guess I just want to rehash that we need two strong, viable political parties in this country. It's my belief that we could use a half dozen, but we need at least two. And the direction that the Republican Party is heading in right now leads me to believe that other than maybe midterm elections when they can kind of rally the base and not a lot of people actually show up to vote, and if just the base shows up to vote, you're going to get these swings back and forth with Senate seats or congressional seats or things like that. But in the long run, I don't foresee the Republican Party taking back the White House in the next decade to 20 years. Not if they keep going the way they're going. Not if they keep disparaging minorities, disparaging women, keeping a minority group such as homosexuals from having rights that should be bestowed upon them by the Constitution, by their birthright. Because as the polling shows, more and more people are supporting things like gay rights. And the immigration, that itself, that's hard to say how people feel on those lines. I know a lot of people that are fairly liberal that are still kind of anti-immigration. But the fact of the matter is that the Hispanic population is growing at a pretty fast pace. And if you keep putting out policies that seem to be antithetical to the growth of that population, well, then they're not going to vote for you. So the Republican Party needs to make a new stance on immigration. They need to soften their stance when it comes to at least the rape part of abortion. They need to stop the culture war when it comes to just using abortion as a wedge tool when it comes to elections, and gay marriage as a wedge tool when it comes to elections, and stand behind the rights of a group of people that they should be standing behind if they really are the party of individual freedom and individual prosperity. And they also need to change their economic stance. They need to stop putting out economic policies that are 30 years old that haven't worked in the past 30 years. Stop telling us that we're just going to lower taxes and everything is going to be okay. What else have you got? You have anything else? Because if that's all you've got, you're going to get nothing. You're not going to get the White House, and you're probably going to lose the House of Representatives. And what does that mean? Well, now the Democrats have everything, and now the Democrats can push through anything. And to me, that's a scary situation. Even as a liberal, I don't want to see one particular party have all that power. Actually, the situation we have right now is good. We have a Democrat president, a Democrat Senate, but a Republican House. But what we need is a House that's willing to be sane, that is willing to listen, that is willing to be the party of maybe, the party of let's hear what you have to say and let's work this out. If you're the party of no, that also does no good, and that goes for both sides. If you have a Republican president and you have a Democratic House, if they're just a House that refuses to listen to the president and the Republican Party and what they want to put out there, well, then we're going to go nowhere. And that's basically where we've gone in the last few years. Any policy that's been passed has really been just a policy that either kind of continues on a policy that already really wasn't working, or is something that just helps a millionaire become a billionaire, or a billionaire become a trillionaire. No policy has really been passed in the last 4 years that is truly a policy that's going to help the middle class. No matter what either party says, that we're for helping the middle class, they have done nothing because they can't agree on anything to get anything done other than what it is that's going to help their largest donors. That's what they're basically doing right now. So I think we all need to look at that. We can all keep sniping at each other and saying that the liberals did this or the conservatives did that. Meanwhile, they keep taking from the cookie jar and handing it to those that are handing them the most. All of the politicians are doing this. So that's why this podcast, Left, Right, in the Middle, that's where we're at right now. We're all left in the middle of the sniping that's going on, that's allowing them to continue to push this money to the top. And where's this money going? It's not coming down. It's not trickling down. So unless we force the Republicans to change their policy, or not force them, but hope that the Republicans change their policy on a lot of issues, moderate on a lot of issues, become a more viable party, so that we can have frank discussions on issues and better candidates when it comes to elections, I don't see the situation in this country changing. I see it becoming worse. And it's not going to be because the liberals are in power and that they did such a bad job. It's because absolute power corrupts absolutely. We need two balanced parties that can feed off of each other, that can hold each other accountable. And if we don't get that, if the Republicans continue to fall further and further from public sentiment concerning who can be a viable candidate for president and their chance of winning these major elections, not just these midterm elections, then, not to be a doomsayer, but, I fear the direction that this country is going.
So I'll hopefully be back in 2 weeks, and hopefully be able to now continue this show on for every 2 weeks have an episode. I'm going to come back in 2 weeks with an episode about the fiscal cliff, and so join me for that. I think it ought to be a pretty interesting show, and as I air that show, it'll probably just be about a week before this impending doom is supposed to happen. So join me in 2 weeks for that show. Go to the Facebook site and start a conversation. Let me know what you think about my thoughts on what the Republican Party needs to do. And please include any of your own. And thanks for listening.
The show is over everywhere. Time to be back by yourself. And you don't have to stand or listen well. So I can tell you how I found some substance. Can I get a shout out now on the radio? Or just a shooby-doo that wants to the soul? And I don't need some dude to walk me through how to do